So solo podcasts can be very easy to mess up. You can go down a rabbit hole that confuses you. It confuses your audience. It confuses anybody that's listening or anybody that's like within earshot of what you're talking about. So today I want to talk about how to create a solo podcast script or outline. That way you stay on track. So let's get right to it. Hey everybody, Krystal here, and today I want to talk about the solo podcast script or outline. Now, there are some basic principles that I want to talk about when it comes to a solo podcast or podcasts in general, but really we're talking about solo podcasts here today. So you have a basic beginning, middle, and an end, whether that's your intro, the middle of your episode, and then your outro with some music or however you have your podcast format set up. If you want to know more about setting up your podcast format, make sure you check out this video right here because it's going to give you all the basics that we're going to cover here today. But let's dive into exactly what you need to have within your podcast script or outline. So one of the questions I see most often about actually scripting a podcast is, what do you use? Like, how do you actually do this? And I have lots of ways that I do this. I don't just have one like, oh, I can only do it this one way. I have several ways because my mind, I guess I kind of get bored doing the same thing over and over in the exact same way each time. So I will script podcast in my Google Documents, the notes on my phone. I will do it on an actual whiteboard. I will do it on a pen and paper. I have done it on like a Postit note before. It does not matter for me. As long as I get the ideas from my head somewhere else, then I am more likely to stay on track with my podcast. So I want you to use whatever you have available. Like, don't overcomplicate it and say, I have to have like everything be perfectly organized. I'm actually reading this. Like it's on my notebook. I sat down, I had some time and I did a whole bunch of planning, and I have a notebook now that's dedicated to just content. But will I always plan everything, every single episode in this notebook? Probably not. There are times when I'm at the gym and I get an idea for a podcast episode, I will pull out Google Docs on my phone and I will just like start. You'll see me walking on the treadmill and I'm just like, okay, I had to stop running because I had a great idea. Or I will talk into my phone and use the voice memos app and then later go back and turn it into a transcript, and then like it's a whole thing. But I don't want you to get locked into this idea that you have to sit down in this perfect environment in order to plan your podcast episodes or have an outline done or create your script. Don't like lose that mentality altogether. All it takes is you having the ability to take ideas from your head and put it somewhere else. That way you can organize it, and that way when you sit down to record, everything just flows a lot more easily. So a question that one of my students asked me recently was, what if I realize that I have more to say about my topic? Like when I'm like going, like I've already written everything down. I have my script, I have my outline. And then I realize later, crap, I meant to say this and I meant to add this in. Like, should I go back and re-record something that I recorded several days ago and it's airing like tomorrow, or it's coming out in a few hours even? Should I go back and fix everything? No, like that's my like, no, don't. I don't think that you should. For one, it causes way too much stress on you. But for two, you can always add more. I think that we get locked in this like mindset of like, I have to include everything I've ever wanted to say about this topic in this one episode. But this is where podcasters burn out because they feel like they've included their like 10 best ideas that they've ever had. And then they're like, I don't know what to say anymore. Well, I think that that's where you should take one amazing idea and turn it into 10 episodes instead of just one amazing idea that's 2 hours long or 3 hours long. I want you to expand on an amazing idea. So here's a perfect example. This video right here that we're creating is actually a spinoff of this video that was all about recording solo podcast. I have had so many people interested in how you record solo podcast episodes that I created this one about creating a solo podcast script or outline because it's stemming off of that one. I'm including things in here that I did not include in that video, and I didn't go back and take that video down and say, oh my gosh, like I totally forgot to do this. No, I'm just creating more content off of that. So that is what I want you to do. If you sit down, you're scripting out your podcast and you realize, man, this is just so much information to shove into one episode. It's going to be too long. It's going to be like way more than I ever expected it to be. Stop right there. Time out. I want you to stop that outline and create a new one. Maybe even create 2 or 3 more. Now, if you sat down and you said, okay, this episode may be like 5 minutes longer than I typically make it, that's totally fine. But if you sit down to record and you realize, man, I'm like 3 times longer than I normally am, you need to make that into another podcast episode. Or like I said, 2 or 3 more podcast episodes, because you're in this for the long game, right? Like you're not just here to create 1 podcast or 10 podcast episodes and then be done with it. Like you're going to be here for a while. You're going to need more content. So I want you to focus on what is going to make the biggest impact on this one episode that you're working on with your solo script. Remember, we have our beginning, our middle, and our end. If we find ourselves talking about 7 different things in the middle, then it's time to break those into 7 different episodes. So that is another point I want to make, is make sure that you're focusing on one thing and each specific outline. In each specific script, you should be talking about one thing. That is how you avoid going down those different rabbit holes. You have to be laser focused on what you're talking about and make sure that you're focusing on one thing per episode. Okay, rant over. So I want you to comment below this video, where have you been struggling the most in your solo podcast episodes? Because you're probably watching this video to get some new ideas on how you can either beef up your solo podcast or just how you can better organize your thoughts and be able to speak without stumbling as much or saying the words or having long pauses, which prolongs the editing process and makes everything more complicated and is one of the reasons why podcasters burn out. I get you. I see you. So I want you to put a comment below this video and tell me, what is your number one struggle as a solo podcaster? Even if you have interview episodes, I want you to just pretend like you are a solo podcaster watching this video and you are struggling with something. So put in the comments below the number one thing that you are struggling with, because I want to make some more content like this, because I want to help you out. Okay, let's get back to the video. And the last thing I want to mention is I had the same client, the same student, who was saying that they were struggling with, keeping everything focused and I realize I have so much to say. She also said, what if I forget to say something? And it goes along the same lines of, if you have way too much information, breaking it up, it's the same thing. If you finish recording and you realized, crap, I forgot to say that, or man, after the fact, I don't know, I do this all the time too. Like I finish recording, I make a video, and then I'm just like, I should have said this. I forgot to mention that. I need to make sure and do this. That just gives me more content, guys. That gives me the ability to go back and create a brand new piece of content. And you can even say, oh, go back and listen to this episode first, or go and watch this video because it's going to explain more about what we're talking about here today. But I want to get laser focused on this one thing. One thing. That's what one thing is like the takeaway from this episode. For your solo podcast outlines and your scripts, you want to make sure that you're focusing in on one topic, one main thing. This whole video has been about solo podcast scripts and outlines. I didn't talk about downloads. I didn't talk about equipment. I didn't talk about anything else because I want to be laser focused on one simple thing. So that's what I have for you for your solo podcast outline. So go write them. Remember, you can do it anywhere. You can do it on your phone. You can do it in a handy dandy notebook. You can do it on a Post-it note. You can do it on a wall. I have my whiteboard back here and I use this for outlining stuff too. And then I'll transfer it to a notebook so I can read it, or I'll put it on my computer. There's so many different things. It's not a one size fits all approach. I want you to just outline it. I want you to have something outside of your head instead of just hitting record and talking and losing your train of thought and then pausing and then saying too much and then going back and saying, wait, did I say that the way I wanted to do it? because it will take you 10 times longer. Okay? That's the moral of the story. It will take you so much longer if you sit down to just record than it will if you take a little bit of extra time, plan out your episodes, script them out, do an entire outline, do a detailed outline. That's really what I do. I don't script out everything I'm going to say for videos or for the podcast, but I do make this is a pretty lengthy outline. Don't look at my handwriting. It's terrible. But I do a pretty decent outline because it's what helps me stay on track, make sure I hit those high points, and add value. It's what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to add value to my podcasting peeps out there. So if you like this video, make sure you give us a thumbs up and subscribe below. That way you are notified every time we put out a brand new podcasting video every single week. Make sure you check out the free 5-day Create Your Podcast Bootcamp in the link below, and check out these other podcasting videos here that are sure to add a little bit more value to you and your podcast. And remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere.